We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Monday night edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Hope everybody enjoyed a great July 4th holiday weekend. It felt like kind of the last big weekend that we all get to chill before stuff starts to ramp up. We got media days actually starting tomorrow, Tuesday in the Big 12, SEC next week. Football is coming, but hope everybody had a great weekend, and we got ourselves a jam-packed show. We're going to open. We will talk Team USA dominating the U-19 World Championships. We talked about it last week. We're going to talk about it this week because I do think there were literally probably about 7 or 8 takeaways for college basketball next year from Mikel Brown Jr., Koa Pete, AJ Dybantsa, the UConn guys, on and on. So we'll discuss everything you missed, Jasper Johnson, as well. From there, we'll talk a little bit. Did you see this story? Jason Crowe Jr., 5-star 2026 basketball prospect. He was a lock to Kentucky until he wasn't. A stunning twist. What's really going on? I did some digging on this one. I'll give you everything I know. Then we'll go to some football recruiting because Alabama is again surging. All of the criticism of Kalen DeBoer and his inability to recruit just is not true. By the way, did you see the Bama mom calling out the haters who say that Nick Saban still does all the recruiting at Bama? So fun story there. And then I'll tell you this. I was at the Dog Beach on Friday afternoon when Felix Ojo, the #1 offensive tackle in high school football, commits to Texas Tech. I actually talked to the agent who negotiated the deal on Friday night, so we will discuss all of that. It is an insane story. It's a recruiting-heavy show, football and basketball, but it's July. We're rocking and rolling. We appreciate your support. Now, before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure you're subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We really do appreciate your support. Listen, we're rocking and rolling. We're always going to talk hoops, but also, obviously, as college football ramps up, as media days ramp up, there will be a lot of football coverage. So make sure you're subscribed here. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, we are also available there. Make sure to subscribe. Also, before we get started, do want to thank our friends, do want to thank our partners, do want to thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs' story, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan, was sitting on the couch one day and said, you know what? I'm watching all these games. I'm turning into a big old filthy slob. I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something I'm going to love. He founded Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But the best part is they taste delicious. This is the alternative to the crap in your grocery aisle. You don't want Doritos. You don't want Fritos. You want to try Cauley Puffs. And here is the cool part about Cauley Puffs. They are giving listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod a very special offer going forward. If you go to CauleyPuffs.com, that's CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com. If you use code Torres, you get 15% off your entire purchase. So you order 1 bag, you order 100 bags, you get 15% off. Visit CauleyPuffs.com. Also, if you'd prefer, they are available on Amazon.com as well. No promo code there. Amazon.com, CauleyPuffs.com, 15% off, promo code Torres. Check them out. Try them. You'll like them. The healthy alternative to the crap in your grocery aisle, Cauley Puffs. Should mention, by the way, anybody else wants to advertise, we are always looking for advertisers. You can reach out to me, Aaron Torres, podcast questions @gmail.com. We got this big screen behind me. You're a beer company, you're a liquor company, you're a steak company, grill company, whatever. Reach out to me, Aaron Torres, podcast questions @gmail.com. With that said, it's July. Everybody else is taking vacation right now. I saw Cowherd's off, McAfee's off, all that. Torres takes no vacations. There is no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. So listen, we've told you over the last 2 or 3 weeks, U-19 World Championships in basketball were going on over these last couple weeks. On last week's show, we talked about Mikel Brown Jr., we talked about Dybantsa, we talked about Crowe Jr. And what I would say is a couple things. I think, first of all, there's going to be some of you saying, Torres, why are you talking about this? What I'll tell you is I watched the gold medal match on Sunday afternoon. There were 65,000 people live streaming that gold medal match. By the way, when I was driving to the beach on Friday, 38,000 people were watching Team USA versus Canada in the quarterfinals on July 4th. So you guys care. And as I've said a million times, I think this is kind of a great little July precursor to college basketball because you have so many stars that are going to be in college basketball playing in this event. Morris Johnson Jr. headed to Michigan. Jasper Johnson headed to Kentucky. Crowe Jr. headed to Arizona. AJ Dybantsa, Mikel Brown Jr. So what I want to do is break down everything you missed. I actually watched most of Team USA and what it means for the season ahead. First of all, credit Team USA. They do get the gold. They actually set a record for points per game scored. I think it was about 114 points per game. Really, outside of Canada in the quarterfinals, they really were not tested. So Team USA with, again, Mikel Brown Jr., Jasper Johnson, on, takes home gold. Now, let's get to some takeaways and what it means for the 2025-2026 college hoop season, because boy, oh boy, do I have a few. First big takeaway, it's this. Mikel Brown Jr., point guard, headed to Louisville. That guy is an all-American candidate. Okay, so we talked about Mikel Brown Jr. We did a full kind of rundown on him, a full segment on him last week. And I used the old Shaq meme. I was not familiar with your game because I knew Mikel Brown Jr. was good. I liked his game, but I did not realize how good this kid is. And I thought he was the best player for Team USA, probably the best player in the tournament. I know AJ Dybantsa got the MVP. I think a lot of people thought it should have been Mikel Brown Jr. Bottom line is a couple things. One, the stats back it up. Led Team USA in scoring just under 15 points per game, 6 assists, shot 47% from three, which I think is kind of one of the big things that not enough people talk about, is the fact this kid's a great three-point shooter, gets others involved. But I think the thing that really stood out to me, I'm still seeing these articles, recap articles, this and that are listing him at 6'2", 6'3". This kid he's got to be about 6'5", okay? And he is a big guard. He gets to all his spots. The story on him coming out of high school was that he grew like 6 inches over like a 2.5-year period. I think he's grown another inch or two probably since the McDonald's All-American game, and he just completely dominated. I think the thing that's interesting about him, we'll get to Dybantsa and Crowe Jr. in a minute, is the last 2 games, and really several of the games, Team USA dominated in such a fashion that the starters didn't really have to play a ton of minutes, and the numbers were probably a little bit deceptive in terms of Mikel Brown Jr. and all these guys probably just didn't play as much as they actually could have, and because of it, the stats weren't even as good as people. They look good on paper. They were probably even better considering kind of a minutes per game, production per minute kind of deal. So Mikel Brown Jr. to me was the best player on Team USA, the best player in the tournament. And it's funny because we have somebody in the comments asking me pretty much every episode, Torres, do an ACC preview. Who is your ACC preseason player of the year? Is it Cam Boozer at Duke? Is it Darian Williams at NC State? I think Mikel Brown Jr. has to be in the short mix, in the short conversation for ACC preseason player of the year. He was that good. And I said it last week. I think he changes the trajectory of both Louisville in the ACC and Louisville on the national level. I had him as a fringe top 10 team, and that was mostly on the returnees and the transfer portal additions. You add a kid that I think could be an All-American and an All-ACC first-team member to that in Mikel Brown Jr., I think it changes the entire trajectory of Louisville. So Mikel Brown Jr. does not win MVP, but to me, he looked like a guy that will be one of the best point guards in college basketball. You're going to hear me say this a lot over the next couple minutes. Cannot wait to watch that kid play college basketball, though. Mikel Brown Jr., takeaway number 1. Takeaway number 2. I would argue that AJ Dybantsa and Crowe Jr. were probably the 2 most high-profile players on this Team USA team. Let me say this. both were as good as advertised. I think they were, frankly, in many ways better than advertised. With Dybantsa, it's funny. There was a little bit of criticism of should he have won player of the year, MVP of the tournament. He finishes second on the team in scoring, 14 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists. I think what was noteworthy, took 50 free throw attempts. And I think if you watch the games, a couple things stood out about Dybantsa. One, can get to the line anytime he wanted. The shot wasn't falling. We'll get to that in a minute. But every time that he needed to get to the rim, every time Team USA needed points on the board, he could just get to the rim, get to the foul line, and shot like 84% from the free throw line, taking 50 free throws over the course of the tournament. So this guy physically is dominating. I thought defensively played his butt off. I remember talking about this during his recruitment. There's so many guys that I think in the high school ranks, they just fall in love with the offensive side of things, fall in love with shooting, fall in love with scoring. Dybantsa really does compete on both ends of the court, and I thought he was phenomenal, especially defensively. Now, what's crazy about Dybantsa, averaged 14.3 points per game, second most on the team, won the MVP of the tournament, and I think you can argue indisputably did not play his best basketball. I think that's a great compliment. It sounds like it isn't, but it actually is, because a couple things. One, as mentioned with Mikel Brown Jr., the starters really, for most of these games, did not play big minutes because Team USA kind of ran away with things. So Dybantsa, Mikel Brown Jr., Crowe Pete easily could have averaged more points, more stats, more whatever, and just didn't get the chance to play. The other thing with Dybantsa, I mentioned it, the shot was not falling. 2 of 18 from 3 in the tournament. I think a lot of people would see that as a negative. Again, I'm not sitting here saying I watched every single second of every single game. But in watching the tournament, I did watch most of it. And seeing Dybantsa, I didn't see anything that looked wrong with the shot. The form looked good. The shot just didn't fall. And so the one thing I can say pretty definitively, this kid ain't going to shoot 11% from 3, at BYU. I think he's a 35 to 40% three-point shooter this year at BYU at the college level. And so I just bring it up because even if he shoots like 33% instead of 11%, we're now talking about 16, 17 points a game as opposed to 14. So he was excellent. He was as good as advertised. I'm excited to see him this year at BYU. And we also got to talk that gentleman on the screen right here, Crowe Pete, who is headed to Arizona. Really interesting story with Crowe Pete. I think, it's funny. He's been in the spotlight. He's been kind of the top 3, 4, 5 players in this class basically since he was in 8th, 9th grade. And I kind of feel like he was a guy that probably has not gotten enough credit for how good he is. And it's because the rise of A.J. Dybantsa, the rise of Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer is awesome. But Crowe Pete also played his senior year with a broken hand, okay? So obviously he was not at his best, still led his high school to a 4th straight state championship. It's kind of funny. I think like Mikel Brown Jr., they both played on the Adidas circuit in high school. It's no disrespect to the Adidas circuit people, but I'm just here to say, I think most of the national media goes to Peach Jam, so you don't see the Adidas guys as much. And Crowe Pete, to his credit, he stayed at his local high school. He didn't go to Montverde. He didn't go to IMG. And so I think he kind of got lost in the shuffle. And I thought this was a great moment for him, a great event for him to kind of say, you know what, guys, I'm still pretty freaking good. Put some respect on my name. 12 points, 7 boards per game. Another guy who easily could have produced more if needed. I thought he was one of the best players in the tournament. He's as good as advertised. A couple more takeaways from Team USA. One, Morez Johnson Jr. Okay, so Morez Johnson Jr., I just think he's way better than people, and I even sort of include myself, way better than people realize. Okay, so this was a kid. We talked about him a lot during portal season. He was at Illinois last year, okay? And during his time at Illinois, I frankly thought was kind of misused by Brad Underwood. And it's not a disrespect. I'm not saying that I have all the answers and the coaches are idiots. But you watch and he just competed and he played hard and he this and he that. Now, he dealt with some injuries. Illinois kind of had all sorts of weird injuries last year. But he transfers, he commits to Michigan. And I'll be honest, even somebody like me, I've spent so much time talking about Yaxel Lendenberg and some of the other guys that they got. Morez Johnson Jr. is awesome. Averaged 9.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game in the tournament, 15 points, 10 rebounds in the gold medal game. This is a guy that I think could be like an all Big Ten first team type player. And that is in a front court with Yaxel Lendenberg, who I said earlier in the spring, I think he could be national player of the year. This is Yaxel. And so you look at what Dusty May did last year with Vlad Golden, Danny Wolf. Danny Wolf was kind of the playmaker. Vlad Golden was kind of the guy in the paint. I think Morez Johnson Jr. takes over that Vlad Golden spot. I think Yaxel Lendenberg takes over the Danny Wolf spot. Remember, by the way, Danny Wolf was a first-round pick. And so I look at that team. I look at what Morez Johnson Jr. did, and I kind of sort of believe that he is underrated. And in turn, I think a lot of people have Michigan underrated as well. I've said I think they can win a national championship. It's going to come down to Elliot Cadeau, but Morez Johnson Jr. just way, way, way better than people realize. Let's keep it going. One other takeaway-ish from Team USA. Jasper Johnson is going to get buckets for Kentucky this year, okay? So it's funny because I put this out on Twitter, and when I did, Aaron_Torres, I had a lot of people say, oh, Torres, you're just hyping him up because he's a Kentucky guy. No, I'm not. Jasper Johnson was good, played off the bench, averaged 8 points per game. I'm not going to say he was better than Mikel Brown Jr. because he wasn't. But here's the thing. Jasper Johnson right now is probably like the fourth guard at Kentucky. Like, let's have an honest conversation about Jasper Johnson, okay? You have Jalen Lowe. You have Otega Owe. You have Denzel Aberdeen. You don't need Jasper Johnson to be great. This is not 2013 under John Calipari where if the five-star freshman doesn't click, the whole season falls apart. He's going to be your fourth guard. And oh, by the way, if he's not your fourth guard, that means he's probably even better than people realize. So 8 points per game, shot 40% from three at a couple, I love the step back. I love the floater. I think he is going to produce offensively. And again, he is probably going to do it as the first or second guard off the bench. You don't need him to average 19 a game. He can develop in his role. He can get back to campus. He can get with the older guys. I think he's going to be really good. And I think when you're talking about him as a sixth or seventh man, you are in great shape if you're Kentucky. Really quickly, let's get to some of the international takeaways. And I'll say this. I think this is a really cool element of where we are in college hoops because of NIL. Now these international players come over and play college basketball rather than staying overseas. We had a couple big-name international guys playing in this event. The first one that stood out to me, Omer Mayer, okay, he is headed to Purdue. So here's the deal with this kid. He committed kind of early in the portal cycle, and there was so much going on with the portal stuff. We didn't talk about him. And so you kind of sit there and you're like, okay, really good, decorated international player, played overseas, played internationally, all that good stuff. And you kind of forgot that he was just there, especially because, oh, by the way, Purdue's bringing back Braden Smith, and you kind of just don't think a ton about him. Well, I bring it up because he was awesome in this tournament. 18 points per game, 4.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds, 2.5 steals. And again, there were a couple games for Israel where he kind of just took over. 6'4", 6'5" guard, gets to his spots, finishes at the rim, mentally tough, physically tough. And it's funny because I watched him. I think he can be a contributor right away in the Big Ten next year. Now, the thing is, again, you have Braden Smith. Thought it was interesting. I think it was Bet Online put out way too early Wooden Award odds. In other words, National Player of the Year in college basketball. They had Braden Smith as number one on that list. So I just bring it up because you don't need this kid to be great. And I think he's kind of viewed as the heir apparent to Braden Smith. He'll come play backup. I think Matt Painter is going to have trouble keeping him off the court. I just loved every single thing I saw about him. The competitiveness, the toughness was awesome for that Israeli national team. I am very excited to watch this kid next year. I think he's going to be really good in college basketball. Another takeaway from the international side, sort of an international, but sort of a U.S. thing as well. Washington had two guys playing in this event, one for the German national team. Germany was the silver medalist behind Team USA that won the gold. But Hans Steinbach was their star player. And oh, by the way, JJ Mandaquit, who played for Team USA, both those guys are going to Washington, okay? And it's funny, I don't remember the last time that we talked about Washington basketball on the Aaron Torres pod. I think it was when Great Osabor committed last spring, and I said, I don't think that's going to work out well. It doesn't. They finished in 18th place. But this year in the portal, they add Des Claude, they add Wesley Yates. But the two guys that played in this event were awesome. Steinbach is a guy that I don't think most people knew as much about as some of these international guys. 17 points, 13 rebounds, a block and a half per game. for Germany on the way to the silver medal. As much as I love Eric Reiba, who's headed to UConn, this kid, Steinbach, was their best player on Germany. And then JJ Mandequit, man, he's just one of those kids that like almost reminds me like a Peyton Pritchard, like savvy point guard, does all the right things. He was part of the Team USA last year with not only Koa Pete and AJ Dybantsa, but also Cam Boozer and a couple others. And so I only bring it up because Mandequit was awesome in this event. And I just think he's one of those point guards that is going to be very good in college early. He is going to be great as time goes on. I think Washington has a chance to be a tournament team this year. They should be much improved in year 2 under Danny Sprinkle. All right, there's one more takeaway. It involves UConn. And producer Matt, this is where you can go ahead and cut the clip because I want to go a little bit longer on UConn. Let's dive into and by the way, if you're a UConn fan, check out the solo UConn clip if you're looking for UConn in this specific clip, blah, 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 blah. All right, let's dive into my final takeaway, and that's this. UConn had 2 players in this U-19 World Cup event. Neither played for Team USA. They had 2 players that are going there next year. Eric Reiba, who, he's a little bit of an interesting story because he's from Germany. He played on the German national team that finished with the silver medal, but he actually played basketball in the U.S. in high school this past year. He's committed to UConn. Also, Jacob Furphy played for the Australian team. And, I'll say this about UConn is that I was watching this event, and I think that, we talk so much about UConn this offseason, and we're going to talk about them here right now, but I just bring it up because I think basically the assumption with these two, I'll just be transparent and we'll work our way backwards, is that I think Eric Reiba, we all just thought, okay, going to be the backup center to Torres Reed. Whatever you get from him, that's great. Almost like a Donovan Clingan in his freshman year behind Adama Sanogo, but the season is going to be made or broken by him. And then I'll be honest, UConn fans might tell you different. UConn fans might disagree. I had zero expectation for Jacob Furphy. 8th, 9th, 10th man, probably not going to play that much. He's a dude. He's whatever. He's who, both of those guys were awesome in this tournament. And if they were as good as they looked playing for this international team, all of a sudden, UConn, to me, their ceiling goes to an entirely different level in 2025, 2026. So let's go ahead and dive into both of these guys. First of all, Eric Reiba, as I said, 7-foot center, played for Germany's national team. Interesting player because I know I just said it, but I'll try not to repeat myself too much here. But, he played ball in the U.S. He was a McDonald's All-American. So I'm not going to sit here and lie and be like, oh, this is the biggest surprise that has ever happened in the history of basketball, okay? But he was really good for Team USA, or Team Germany, excuse me. Averaged 15.5 points, 5 rebounds, 59 or so % shooting, was really good around the rim, kind of quick feet, soft touch, all the things that you want to see from a 7-foot center. And again, I know he played in the U.S. and was a McDonald's All-American, but I thought he asserted himself well. I thought he played with confidence. I thought he got better as the tournament went on. And I just thought he was just, frankly, just better than I was expecting. Now, the one that was definitely better than I was expecting was Furphy, okay? So he was, UConn fans, correct me, I believe he was the first player that actually committed in the class of 2025. Braylon Mullins, Reiba, a couple others commit afterward. But he was just a guy, he's from Australia, you don't really know what to expect. Well, he comes into this tournament, and he starts off with a bang. 24 points against Team USA in the opener of the tournament, 24 against the Dominican Republic later, 16.5 points in the tournament, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 2 steals. He's just kind of a do-it-all, jack-of-all-trades guard that kind of did a little bit of everything. He was a scorer when he had to be. He was a playmaker when he had to be. Great defensive player. And I just didn't think he was that good, and I did not have expectations for him going into this tournament or for UConn next year. And so you flash forward. You add those two to what we already know that UConn has. I think it's going to be a very fun season for Dan Hurley and the Huskies ahead. And transparently, I just think they're going to be flat out better than I think a lot of people are expecting or a lot of people realize. Because the bottom line is, and we've talked about UConn pretty much on and off since what? Early April when their season ends against Florida in the round of 32. Season didn't go to plan, but we talked about all the retention, why it was important, and why the UConn Huskies this offseason were going to be defined by retention going into the 2025-2026 season. Well, they get Solo Ball back. All Big East second team, 14 points per game, 41% three-point shooting. He was one of the most improved players in college basketball this year. I think he has like first-team All-American type talent if it comes together in the offseason. I think we've talked about this before, maybe in the offseason grades, but, UConn does a great job with social media. He seems to have taken on a vocal leadership kind of role. He's kind of been a guy who's been a leader by example. Now it seems like he knows, this is my third year in college basketball. I'm the man. It's my moment, and I think he is ready for a breakout year. Alex Karaban's coming back. Listen, we know it was a disappointing year for Alex Karaban. Not all of it was his fault. Got the concussion early. I think it took him longer to recover than I think a lot of people maybe realize kind of publicly. I don't think it was talked about as much. The role kind of changed throughout the year. Liam McNeely's playing well early. He gets hurt. He's out for a month. Karaban's got to be the guy. Then he's not the guy. They don't really have that true point guard. So I think now that the roles are more defined, I think he'll be improved. Torres Reed, we've talked about it again. A dude that basically was a dominant low post player the final probably 2-3 weeks of the season. Keep going back to that 24-point, 18 rebound, 6 block performance against Providence late in the year. So those are your core three. Jalen Stewart, I think, is due for a breakout year. Jaden Ross comes back. I think he is due to be much improved. And then again, it was defined mostly by those returnees as well as those guys that you added early in the offseason. Silas Demery Jr. comes in from Georgia. He's that big point guard that UConn was desperately lacking last year. He's going to step into that role. I think he's going to be great. Was maybe Georgia's second best player last year on a tournament team alongside Asa Newell, who of course was a first-round pick this year. Well, he's going to be around much more talent at UConn. I think his skills are going to be accentuated. Malachi Smith, who I know is out with injury right now, is probably going to play that sixth-man role. Braylon Mullins, Dan Hurley has already said, I expect him to be a one-and-done. And so I bring up all those names. Ball, Karaban, Stewart, Ross, Torres Reed, and then Braylon Mullins, Silas Demery, and Malachi Smith, because that was supposed to be the core. And kind of anything after that you got was just icing on the cake. Again, maybe Ryba you expect a little bit from because he needs to be that backup 5-man, but I don't think anybody went into this tournament being like, he's going to be a 15-point-per-game scorer in this tournament and play as well as he did. And then again, Furphy. We're talking about Furphy as one of the better players in this tournament. Now, I think as the tournament went on, he kind of wore down. He had to play a bigger role for Team Australia, But he's supposed to be like your 9th or 10th man that you're just not really expecting anything from. And that dude is dominant for Team USA. And so I just bring it up because you add those two. You get from them what you got in this tournament. It's a wrap. I mean, that all of a sudden makes UConn that much deeper, that much more talented, that much less of a drop-off when they go to the bench. It is a total game changer. And so it's funny because I tried to consider everything when doing my way too early top 25. I had UConn at number 7, And I basically had him at number 7 under the assumption that, that core 7 or 8 guys that I said, with Ryba being the backup 5 and Furphy just not even being a factor. Well, now if Furphy's giving you 10, 12, 15 minutes and he can really contribute, which it looks like he's going to be able to do, total game changer. If Ryba can step in and there's no miss off of the, Torres Reed when he comes out of the game, total game changer for UConn. So I'll tell you what, I think of every team in this event, you could argue Louisville's a huge winner with, Louisville is a huge winner with Mikel Brown Jr. Dybantsa looked as good as advertised. I don't think anybody was a bigger winner than UConn, who all of a sudden now just has 2 dudes that you kind of weren't really expecting that much from, who all of a sudden have a chance to be really special this year. And then, the way college hoops goes, you never know, but could be there for 2-3 years and be real impact players down the road. All right. That was a long first segment. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Chat is a little bit quiet. So let's pick it up, get in the chat, and let's come back and talk about a wild basketball recruiting story. Okay. So Jason Crowe Jr., 5-star, was a lock to Kentucky. It was done. Nobody was even questioning it. Then next thing you know, he sets his decision date, and it seems like he's going to another SEC school. Very strange story. Let's come back. Let's react to it. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So, again, chat is quiet. We got to get that chat rolling, humming, whatever. It's a fun time of year. Everybody else is taking time off. We are rocking and rolling. Let's keep the party going with a very interesting basketball recruiting note from the weekend, okay? So, obviously, 2025 is in the books. We know all the guys that are going to be playing college basketball next year, and it's really kind of the time that you start to look ahead to 2026. Peach Jam, by the way, is coming up next week. The Adidas Championships in LA, not far from where I am, are taking place next week. So summer circuit stuff is coming to an end, which will then lead to fall visits, which will then lead to commitments. And it feels like the class of 2026, it feels like things are a little bit quieter. I think it'll pick up in September, October when players visit campuses, okay? But there was one player that it felt like we all felt pretty good. 5-star player, really good, that we kind of knew where he was going. His name is Jason Crowe Jr., okay? He is a 5-star member of the class of 2026, number 5 player overall, according to 24/7 Sports. And, I'll just be transparent, is that he was basically, from the moment that his recruitment picked up, it seemed almost certain that he was going to go to Kentucky. The long and the short of it, and we'll get into details later. There's some interesting quotes we'll share later on in this segment. But basically, Jason Hart, who is an assistant at Kentucky, is best friends with his dad, Jason Crowe Sr., who briefly played in the NBA, grew up together, and basically Jason Crowe Jr. has referred to Jason Hart as an uncle. And so I bring it up because kind of just felt like all these 2026 kids, Tyron Stokes, Caleb Holt, Talon Kinney, whatever, kind of wide open recruitments. Who knows who's going to end up where? Well, I bring it up because it felt like Jason Crowe Jr. was a done deal to Kentucky. That felt like the case even on Friday, July 4th, when late at night, Joe Tipton put out a tweet basically saying that, Jason Crowe Jr. is actually going to make his college announcement on July 19th. Now, what was interesting, or July 18th, excuse me. Now, what was interesting about that announcement, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it there. The 6'3" guard does not have a list of finalists publicly that he's choosing from. So I thought that was interesting, but I think we all assumed it was going to be Kentucky. Well, I bring it up because on Sunday night, we got another follow-up from Joe Tipton. And to quote our buddy Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend, because Joe Tipton tweeted out and reported on Sunday night, Kentucky is no longer seen as the front-runner for 5-star Jason Crowe Jr., with another SEC school now gaining serious momentum. Well, after doing some digging, it feels like Missouri Dennis Gates is the favorite. So what the heck is going on, and how bad of a look would this be if Mark Pope did not close on a 5-star that was deemed to be an overwhelming Kentucky lean? Let's go ahead and discuss, okay? So first of all, Jason Crowe Jr., I think, listen, if you're watching this, you know, I always like to tell a little bit about the game, but 6'3", dude is a bucket getter, okay? He's another one. You know, I love these stories of kids that stay at the local high school with all their friends. He's from Inglewood. He's playing at Inglewood High School, and he's dominating the scene out here in LA, okay? But 6'3", lefty, great scorer, like A++ score. Kid just gets buckets. You want to know how good that he is? How about this? Over the weekend, he played in the Drew League. The Drew League is a pro-am league. Basically, a bunch of NBA dudes roll through. You know, in the past, James Harden's played. The late, great Kobe Bryant has played. You got a bunch of guys rolling through the Drew League that play in the NBA. I think LeBron has played here and there. You got a bunch of dudes that have played in the NBA that are now retired. You have dudes that are playing overseas that were big-time college stars. This kid, as a 17-year-old, went to the Drew League this weekend and scored 45 points in a game. So it shows you how good he is. It shows what kind of scorer he is. And it shows that he is going to make a college very happy. Now, the big question becomes, how the heck did Missouri get in the mix? Because, again, Kentucky was deemed the favorite. There were others that were listed, but Missouri was never one that was seen to be a favorite. And so I did some digging, and really the best that I can come up with is two things as to why Missouri may have jumped out ahead in this recruitment. One, and by the way, this is assuming that Missouri is the favorite. We'll find out here soon enough when he actually commits. So the first thing, because I assumed it was Kentucky, okay? And I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to this. I'm not going to that. But I assumed it was Kentucky. And when it wasn't, I asked around to some people I trust. I think there are two things that stand out. One, bottom line is there is a much quicker path to playing time at the point guard spot at Missouri in 2026, 2027 than there is at Kentucky. And listen, I know it's the portal era. I know you can never really count on guys going year over year and playing multiple years. But Missouri, listen, roster's not as deep. Roster's not as talented heading into 2025, 2026. A couple of older veteran players there. But Jason Crowe, if he were to commit to Missouri, would probably step in, get the ball right away, and it would be go, 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 full speed ahead. If I can use a cross-sport reference, we're going to talk about Felix Ojo in a minute. Part of the reason Felix Ojo committed to Texas Tech, among many things, this was the football offensive tackle. He's basically going to be the starting left tackle the day that he steps on campus. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's kind of the same with Jason Crowe Jr. At Kentucky, I don't think you can say that right now because Jalen Lowe is coming in after a very productive 2 seasons at Pitt, but he's still only going into his junior year. And so if Jalen Lowe is as good as we expect, then the bottom line is that I don't think he's an NBA player, certainly not after 1 season at Kentucky. I know he went through the draft process. I know he got positive feedback, but I think it's very realistic that this is a 2-year guy at Kentucky, plays this year, has success, and comes back as a senior a year from now. By the way, this is part of the reason that Kentucky lost to Caden Lewis, the 4-star that was committed in this past cycle. I think Caden Lewis was fired up to come to Kentucky. Then they take a point guard with 2 years left of eligibility, and all of a sudden Caden Lewis is like, wait a second, I got to wait till my junior year to have the ball in my hands? I might have to reconsider he ends up at Villanova. So I think that's one. Playing time, just probably a quicker path to playing time at Missouri. 2, the other thing, and it's so funny because in this NIL era, I think we always have to reevaluate. We have to reevaluate just how we perceive things, and things are always changing. I think the rev share era is going to be very interesting, okay? And let me explain why. It's because, listen, the rev share era, I think you all know, but I'll try to be brief here. Rev share is basically this. Every school is going to have you've seen that number, $20.5 million. Every school is going to have to spend on their athletics for quote-unquote NIL, okay? They'll have $20.5 million. I would guess in most places, probably like 15 to 16 million, especially in the SEC, will go to football. Another 2, 2.5, 3, maybe 4 on the high end will go to basketball. And then, baseball will get some, women's sports will get some, whatever. Well, I bring it up because everybody is going to use that money differently in both football and basketball. Again, Texas Tech I talked to the agent of Felix Ojo. He was like, yeah, that's all coming from rev share. So Texas Tech is saying we're committing this much money out of our rev share pot to this offensive tackle. And where it comes into play in basketball is I think there's going to be some really tough decisions that all these schools have to make. Do you commit a lot of money up front to high school players? Do you commit any money to high school players and save it all for the portal? If you know you're going to have guys coming back, how much can you commit? Because, these guys might be here for 2-3 years and we got to make sure to take care of them. And so what I was told was that basically Missouri, they know they're going to need a point guard in 2026, 2027. And so they're like, dude, we will commit an inordinate amount of our rev share money to this kid. Now, I don't have an exact dollar. I've seen speculation. I'm not going to speculate. And by the way, I don't really care. And I'll say it, if it's a football player, if it's a baseball player, if it's a softball player, spend your money how you want. I'm not here to criticize. It's the pay for play world. We can say it's not pay for play. It is. So I just bring it up to very simply say that when you factor in that Kentucky might not have a starting point guard spot, and frankly, Missouri seems ready to commit an inordinate amount of money, in my opinion, into this kid, I think that's how you end up with Missouri being the favorite. Now, a couple things. One, we'll find out if Missouri actually gets them. That's just the perception right now that they are the favorite. But two, I do think we have to have kind of a pseudo-honest conversation about Mark Pope and this staff and where they stand right now this particular summer. The thing I'll say about this is pretty straightforward. Like with Mark Pope, listen, some people might disagree. I think I have been totally fair to Mark Pope, and I think I've been not only a defender, but almost an advocate of Mark Pope. I remember when he got hired, people were like, oh, I'm like, guy knows what he's doing. Just give him time. And to his credit, I think he largely did basically everything that you could ask of a first-year head coach at Kentucky. Put together a roster on the fly last year. Won big games, beat Louisville, beat Tennessee twice, beat Florida, the eventual national champs, beat Duke. Like the guy did what he was supposed to do. To quote Mark Pope, he understood the assignment. And so really outside of stuff that wasn't realistic in year one, a national championship, a Final Four or whatever, I would say that Mark Pope largely has done everything that you could have realistically asked for him. The only thing that I would say that you cannot say that Mark Pope has done so far is that he really hasn't landed any high-profile recruits outside of the state of Kentucky from the high school ranks. He hasn't landed any, actually, as a matter of fact. First recruiting class, okay, short notice. Travis Perry is already committed. He ends up staying. Trent Noah, you flip him from South Carolina. This past year, Jasper Johnson, Malachi Moreno, both top 25 prospects. Malachi Moreno, McDonald's All-American. They're both from Kentucky, though. And so I think this was kind of an important cycle for Mark Pope to prove like, we can go get the best of the best outside of Kentucky. And Jason Crowe Jr. was believed to be the guy who started all of it this year. Well, now, if you lose Jason Crowe Jr., I do think that perception that you cannot close on players with no Kentucky ties does not help, especially given his relationship with Jason Hart. Now, listen, I've said it. Love Jason Hart. Love Jay Hart. Have known him since his USC days, okay? I think he's a great assistant. I think he's going to be a great college head coach someday. But here is the relation. This is how deep the relationship is with Jason Crowe Jr. Producer Matt, you could play the quote that we could show the quote we found from KSR. So Jason Crowe Jr. did an interview with Kentucky Sports Radio where he said, honestly, that's like my uncle talking about Jason Hart. He used to train me when I was younger at Inglewood High School. That's just family right there. That's really like my uncle right there. When you have people that you know there and you know how they move, they're in there just to help you. Having him there, it definitely helps me look at Kentucky with a different eye. Listen, not a criticism of Jason Hart. I understand that this is an NIL rev share world and Missouri just might be willing to commit more. It doesn't change the fact that this is still a bad look. Now, a couple things. And by the way, it's not just for Jason Hart. It's for the whole staff because the whole staff has been there now 18 months and they have yet to land a single player that does not have Kentucky ties. Now, a couple things. It's worth noting. 3 things. 1, kid has not committed yet. And just because right now Missouri is the favorite, he's supposed to commit July 18th or July 18th. Yeah, that's right. 11 days from now. So a lot of stuff can change between now and then. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse. He may still end up at Kentucky. 2, I think you can argue, why even recruit high school? Doesn't even matter in this era. It's a different world. Who cares? You don't need to recruit the high schools in this era. Like, just go get a bunch of guys. But at the same time, I will say, I do think that it is a little bit of a negative. It is a little bit of a pushback on Mark Pope, but it's a little bit of a question that he does need to answer at some point in this cycle. Now, the good news is, by the way, you might only get Kentucky commits in this cycle, and you still might end up pretty good. Tyron Stokes, the number one player in America. He's playing high school ball, Sherman Oaks High School in California. I actually drove by that high school earlier today. Well, guess what? He is from Louisville originally, so you could very easily land him. Also, on top of that, who's the other one? Talon Kinney, 5-star point guard from the state of Kentucky, played at OTE with Jasper Johnson. So you just never know. And so I'm not ready to give up on this recruitment. If you're a Kentucky fan, I don't think it's time to give up on this recruitment. But I do think this was kind of an important one that you had to close. We will see what happens. Jason Crowe Jr. set to commit July 18th. We'll see what happens from there. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back when we do. 2 quick football stories to get to. Football's ramping up. We are inching closer. Alabama on a recruiting tear. By the way, a mom of a player calling out all the haters. We'll discuss that. Then also that wild Felix Ojo story I just referenced, $5 million for a 5-star offensive tackle. We'll discuss it all next. Quick break. Be right back. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and I've told you before, when I'm on the road, when I'm podcasting, sometimes you end up looking like a slob. Look at me, mismatched socks. I'm wearing shorts. What am I doing? The folks at FioBox said, Torres, let's get you some fresh gear to look better when you're on camera. Well, what do you think? This is all part of the spring collection for FioBox. These jeans, perfect when I want to go to games, casual, serious, business casual, you name it. Got the quarter zip. And oh, by the way, we got this perfect zip. This is the perfect spring, summer zip that you can wear when you're out with friends. Maybe it gets a little chilly. Maybe it's a little chilly in the morning. Perfect for all occasions. So this is what I need you to do. If you like what you see, and you should, what I need you to do is visit fioboc.com. That's fioboc.com, FIOBOC. By the way, FioBoc has a special promo code for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Use promo code Torres and get 20% off your purchase. Thank you again to FioBoc. By the way, make sure that you're following them on social media at FioBoc, FIOBOC. Thank you, FioBoc. All right, everybody. All right, back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. College football, speaking of back, it's coming back in a big way over these next couple weeks. Like media days are here, people. Big 12 media days start Tuesday, as in like tomorrow, as in today when some of you will be listening. Next week, SEC media days, I will not be there, but we'll have plenty of coverage of whatever the craziness is that comes out of media days. So let's go ahead and dive into a couple interesting stories from the weekend. And the first one, they're both recruiting, but this one I want to talk about Alabama, okay? So Alabama, certainly, we talk about an interesting 18 months for Mark Pope. Certainly been an interesting 18 months for Kalen DeBoer, the head coach of Alabama football, okay? So listen, you don't need me to tell you the history, but gets the job January of 2024. Nick Saban, that stunning retirement. We all remember where we were. We all remember what we were thinking. None of us believed the Chris Lowe tweet. But Kalen DeBoer gets the job. And it immediately, I think pretty much universally, most people agreed on 2 very simple things. One, he was going to be great X's and O's. This was a guy coming off a national championship run at Washington, national championship game run at Washington, I should say. Developed Michael Penix into a first-round pick, of Heisman Trophy finalist, on and on. But I think it was fair at the time to question Kalen DeBoer's recruiting chops. Remember, this was a guy, if my memory serves me correct, had never signed a top 100 prospect in his time in college football. Now, admittedly, he basically had one full cycle at Washington, whatever. And so the question became, like, how committed is he going to be to recruiting? Can he come to the South? Can he do what he needs to do? On and on. Well, in year one, he kind of proved, the recruiting thing isn't going to be an issue. To his credit, whether he's a great recruiter or whether he knows how to identify people that do the job and understand the assignment, they did a great job. Bring in GM Courtney Morgan. He's one of the best evaluators in college football. We talked about him at the time. When DeBoer landed from Seattle to Tuscaloosa, the only person on the plane with him other than his family Wasn't Ryan Grubb, wasn't a star player. It was Courtney Morgan, his GM. And also they added Aaron Hodges, a bunch of guys in that recruiting department. They did a good job. And it showed in the class of 2025. They finished with the number 3 overall class, headlined by Keelan Russell. And so DeBoer's credit, listen, I don't think on the field things went well in 2025, as certainly not as much as the Bama standard. 9-3 overall. You lose to Vandy, you lose to Oklahoma. Now I'll defend DeBoer because I think some of the things behind the scenes were maybe a little bit crazier. I don't think Jalen Milroe was really the quarterback for his system. But what you could not deny after 1 year was while the results on the field need to be better, the recruiting was going to take a backseat to no one. Well, I bring it up because as good as the 2025 class was, number 3 in America, 8 top 100 prospects, the 2026 class might be even better, okay? So if you were on a boat, at the pool, at the lake, doing whatever, and you were not paying attention, really, the 4th of July weekend, it was just a Bama recruiting party that has really gone on basically since the beginning of June. Now, the most notable commits of late, okay? So just in the last couple of days, last Wednesday going into the holiday, 5-star Cedarian Morgan, 5-star receiver from Bama, from the state, commits to Alabama. On top of it, on Saturday, Jeriah Edwards, 5-star safety, also commits to Bama. He's from the Baltimore area. Both of those guys choose Bama over Georgia, Auburn, and a few other schools. So those were the 2 latest commitments. But as you just saw on the screen, just in the month of June into July, it's been insane, okay? Here are among the players that they have committed. Jeriah Edwards, as I said, 5-star safety from Baltimore. Cedarian Morgan, some believe he is the best wide receiver in the class of 2026. 5-star edge, Xavier Griffin. We're going to get to him in a minute because his mom certainly had some things to say. 4-star athlete, Max Suter. 4-star running back, Xavier Crowe, who, of course, is believed to be the number 1 running back in America. And 4-star offensive tackle, Sam Utu. Okay? Those are just the commitments since June 1st. And with it, how about this? Bama now, at one point, they had a top 3 class. They're now in the top 5 nationally. Now, what's interesting about them, they have only 19 commits. So they're currently ranked 5th in the recruiting rankings, but it's because they have 19 commits. Everybody ahead of them, the 4 schools ahead of them, are USC, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and I'm blanking on the last one. Let me check it really quick. The bottom line, why I bring it up, all of those schools have like 24 to 25 commits. Let me see here. It is the 2026 class. It is USC, Georgia, Texas A&M, Notre Dame. All of those schools have at least 24 commits. Bama has just 19. How about this? The 4 schools ahead of them have a combined 3 5-stars committed. Bama has 4 alone, okay? And so I just bring it up because Bama is on another recruiting roll. And the one thing I'll say is this. Whether Kalen DeBoer works at Alabama or not, whether he wins a national championship, whether he wins 3, whether he wins 0, whether he goes 0-12 this year and he gets fired, the one thing you cannot question is his ability to adjust to the SEC and, oh, by the way, recruit his you-know-what off. And no matter what happens over these next 2 to 3 years, Kalen DeBoer is going to have as much talent and the talent needed to compete at the top of the sport, okay? And so, first of all, just want to go ahead and give Kalen DeBoer credit because, again, this was something that was not guaranteed when he got to Alabama. There were questions coming from the Pacific Northwest, had only been a power conference head coach for 2 years. Was he going to be able to get the job done at this level? So far, so good, okay? Like I said, 8 top 100 players in the class of 2025. Already 8 top 20 or top 100 play. Did I say 8 top 100? I think I said 8 top 100. 8 top 100 players in the class of 2025. 8 top 100 players already committed in the class of 2026. And we still got, 5 months until National Signing Day? By the way, as producer Matt reminded me, make sure to follow our Torres on Bama page for late-breaking Bama news. Torres on Bama. But one, like I said, he's proving that he can recruit at the highest level. And I know he's coming off a disappointing year. I don't worry as much about the coaching. Like, I know you don't want to lose to Vandy. I know you don't want to lose to a bad Oklahoma team last year. But at the same time, let's peel back the layers on that disappointing Alabama season. In that season, yes, they quote unquote went 9-3 in the regular season, 9-4 with the bowl game loss. One, I don't believe Jalen Milroe is the right quarterback for that system. I'm sorry. I know Jalen Milroe said all the right things. I know he helped hold that locker room together during the coaching change. Here's the bottom line. Nick Saban had to coach around Jalen Milroe. Kalen DeBoer had to coach around Jalen Milroe, okay? And so I just bring it up because to me, that would be – I just don't think he's the right quarterback. And so I'm not going to judge Kalen DeBoer off what happened with Jalen Milroe. And even in a down year, they still beat LSU on the road. They still beat Georgia at home. They still beat a very good South Carolina team. That was during a down year. By the way, they easily could have beaten Tennessee. So I just bring it up because the recruiting, because the on-the-field stuff hasn't been as bad as people think. The schedule actually breaks as nicely as it can in the SEC this year. Yes, you have to go to Georgia, but you get LSU at home. You get Tennessee at home. You get a couple breaks on that schedule, again, as much as you can in the SEC. But he's just doing what so many people thought he couldn't do, which was recruit his butt off. Two quick things. One, don't think he's done, okay? First of all, there is another 5-star in the state of Alabama, a player, a defensive player in that state that they're in hot pursuit of Anthony Tank Jones, okay? Tank Jones, 5-star defensive lineman. He is down to four schools. It seems as though Alabama is in the mix for him and in the mix for some other guys as well. But I just bring it up because Kalen DeBoer is doing an excellent job. He's closing down the state of Alabama, and I don't think he's done yet either. The other thing is this. He's also proving the critics wrong who are convinced that he actually has nothing to do with Alabama's success. Okay, so listen, I understand fan is short for fanatic. I understand that, you're going to talk smack about your rivals. I get all that. But one of the dumbest things that I have heard is that Kalen DeBoer isn't doing the recruiting. Nick Saban is still doing all the recruiting for Alabama, okay? On a scale of 1 to that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard being a 10, it's like a 9.6. Okay, first of all, Nick Saban is on College Game Day. He's not even on campus pretty much any point from mid-August, if he's on campus at all, to be clear. I don't even think he's on campus that much. But from like late August to mid-December, he's on the road every single weekend. Well, guess when you do all of your recruiting, yes, some of it is in the summer. A lot of it is in the fall on game days. Saban ain't there. So this notion that he's doing all the recruiting is ridiculous. But I think we can finally put a pin in that thanks to the mother of Xavier Griffin. Okay, so I mentioned this a minute ago. Xavier Griffin, 5-star edge, just committed to Bama. She went on Twitter, and she had no time for the idiots. Okay, she said, let me be clear for Zay Social, that's her son, his recruitment when it comes to Alabama. It makes me mad to hear Kalen DeBoer can't recruit because of our coach and his staff did a great job. I met Saban once, but he is not the one that offered or talked to us at any point. C-Rob, that's obviously Christian Robinson, the outside linebackers coach, was and is the GOAT that got my son to Bama. Love our staff and can't wait. Roll Tide. So I guess the only point I am trying to make is that if you are one of those people that is convinced that Kalen DeBoer can't recruit, that Nick Saban is doing whatever, one, I hate to say you were always kind of an idiot, but two, we have definitive proof from a mom, 5-star recruit. Yeah, I met Saban once in passing. He didn't offer me. He didn't recruit me. It was the current staff. Anyway, I've rambled long enough about Alabama football and Alabama recruiting, but right now they have as good of a class as anybody, player for player. The individual recruiting rankings, they have the composite rankings as far as total players, total commitments, everything. But in terms of the individual player rankings, they're right up there at the top. Again, only 19 commitments. The 4 schools ahead of them have at least 24. Kalen DeBoer's figured out this recruiting thing, and he's figured it out quickly. Let's switch gears. Because you know who else has figured out this recruiting thing? Texas Tech. All right, so let's get into this story. This was crazy. So I think I mentioned this off the top. Friday afternoon, I was at the dog beach. Shout out my little girl, Charlie. We took my little girl, Charlie, to the dog beach. By the way, if you want to follow her on Instagram, I believe it's @_cockapoo_Charlie_. We'll have producer Matt put the link to her Instagram page if you want to follow her adventures. But we were at the dog beach, and listen, you kind of knew Felix Ojo. So Felix Ojo was one of the top 5-star, top 10 prospect. Okay. I think Jackson Cantwell is technically the top ranked offensive tackle. He's committed to Miami. But Felix Ojo, 5-star, can't miss player. And he was about to commit. And he had a public Final Four of Texas, Ohio State, Florida, and Michigan. So you can believe my shock and pretty much everybody else's shock when you tuned into social media and you saw that Felix Ojo, 5-star, Final Four of Texas, Ohio State, Florida, Michigan, chooses the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Like I said, I was at the dog beach. I almost dropped my phone. But then I did drop my phone when I saw the other particulars, as according to his agent, Derek Shelby, Felix Ojo signed a 3-year guaranteed contract at $5.1 million, all part of the revenue share. And let me tell you this thing freaked out. This thing drove all of college football crazy. How can you guarantee a 3-year contract to a high school player? How can you pay that much money? What is going on in the world of college sports? Well, I'll tell you this. I've actually known Derek Shelby, the agent, for a long time. We had him on our Fox Sports radio show on Friday night. We might get him on the pod. If you guys want to hear him on the pod, let me know, because we can get him on very easily. When you break it all down, one, I don't think it's nearly as big of a deal as everybody makes it out to be. And two, for everybody who complained that it was only Alabama and only Ohio State and only Clemson who got all the 5 stars, well, guess what? This is the new world of college football. Texas Tech gets their man, and Texas Tech is really trying to build a team that can compete at the top of college football, certainly at the top of the Big 12. Okay. So listen, what I would say, like I said, I talked to Derek Shelby, the agent, on the record. This was on Fox Sports Radio. Another link producer Matt can drop in there is our actual interview with him, is basically that there were a couple things that stood out. And we had him on for about 25 minutes. We got great response to it. And he had a lot of interesting things to say. Why Texas Tech? Okay, because Texas Tech was not a finalist. Well, first of all, they did have that fully guaranteed 3-year deal. And I know everybody wants to freak out, but I think you have to look at it from both perspectives, okay? And I thought Derek actually brought up a very interesting point. Everybody's freaking out about the 3-year deal. Texas Tech was the only one that would guarantee 3 years. And you can sit there and say, how can you do that? That's not what college sports is supposed to be about. Except here's the thing. It's a new world. We acknowledge that this is basically professional sports. And this is kind of where things are going, okay? And so what he said, I found it very interesting. He basically said, look, all these other schools, they only wanted to do a 1-year deal with them. They'd pay him whatever out of the rev share, this, that, the other thing. And what he said I thought was very interesting. He said the 1-year deal actually protects both sides. Because if you're a player and you ball out, then you can renegotiate, you can enter the portal, use it as leverage. He said, we are committed for 3 years to Texas Tech. We legally cannot get out of this. Now, I'm sure there's some sort of clause. He claims they can't get out of it at all. Like basically, Joey McGuire, the head coach, could retire and they would be staying at Texas Tech. Now, I don't know if that's true. But what he's saying is, one, if this kid's an All-American in year 1, guess what? We're still staying at Texas Tech. We can't even get out of this contract. We can't just enter the portal and renegotiate to the highest bidder. But that is why it's such an interesting contract, because there's the player side of it where it's like, do you really want to commit for 3 years? But then it's also the school side of it as well. The kid could stink. The kid could not be good. The kid could not develop. The kid could this. The kid could that. And so everybody's freaking out and getting all mad. And I'm sitting here saying I think it's the opposite. Credit to the kid. He's committed to the school. That's one. And two, listen, I know what people are going to say. Well, if you go to Texas, they'll develop you better for the pros. Why? Now, listen, I'll say this. You'll probably have a better chance to play for a national championship at Texas. But who's to stop? Pros come from everywhere. Pros come from Boise. Boise State had a top 5 pick this year. I can't think of, I'm going way back, but Jerry Rice came from Mississippi Valley. Walter Payton, not Walter Clayton. I almost said Walter Clayton. Walter Payton came from Jackson State. Pros come from everywhere. Producer Matt with the randomest poll says Mean Joe Green was from North Texas, okay? Dan Orlovsky was from UConn. Now, he wasn't a first-round pick, but, pros come from everywhere. So this notion that he won't be developed at Texas Tech is preposterous, okay? But then there's the flip side of it. What if he isn't as good? What if he gets hurt, God forbid? And his agent said this, Derek Shelby, in every interview he's done. Listen, I don't know if $5 million is going to have you set for the rest of your life, but it gives you a good start. I mean, something bad could happen tomorrow. Something bad could happen on the first play of his career. And so, yes, the school's taking a little bit of a risk, but the player is taking a little bit of a risk as well. And in a worst case scenario, the player is set coming out of college. And in a best case scenario, Texas Tech now has a cornerstone player, and they might get good. What if this kid is a 3-time All-American? Then they got great value out of all of it, and they got him in the program. And so I don't want to hear that it's this big sob story. I'm sorry. And oh, by the way, for people who are like, they shouldn't commit. It's too much this. How can you give that much to a high school player? Well, guess what? We do it all the time in the pros. It's called the NFL draft. And sometimes you're taking a Joe Green from North Texas, and he's awesome. But sometimes you take a guy and it doesn't work out. And sometimes free agents get overpaid. Deshaun Watson got a fully guaranteed contract. How's that working out for the Cleveland Browns? It's a risk. Nobody's like, oh, the poor Browns. How? No. They took a risk. They invested money in the wrong guy. It didn't work out. Maybe it'll work out for this kid. Maybe it won't. But this is where we are in college sports. You don't have to like it, but it's where we are. I give both sides credit because they're taking each a little bit of a risk. Beyond that, and I want to say this because to me it's very important, is that everybody's, this isn't what college sports is supposed to be. I don't like it. Texas Tech. So if he had committed to Notre Dame for the same price, it would have been okay. If he committed to Texas for the same price, it's like, why can't Texas Tech spend that? Again, we talked about it with this rev share pot of $20.5 million for each school, probably 15, 16 going to football. Everybody can spend it in their own way. Texas was not committed. Ohio State was not willing to commit for 3 years. They were going to spend their money differently. That's okay. They're going to spend it on returning players. They're going to spend it on a quarterback. They're going to spend it on this. Everybody's spending it differently. So why is it wrong that Texas Tech is spending it their way? And oh, by the way, for everybody who complained for years, because I heard it for years, college football is too top heavy. College football, it's only Ohio State. It's only Alabama. It's only Clemson. I want other teams to be good. Well, how do you think they're going to get good? This is how. NIL, you got to take some risk. But what NIL is indisputably doing is spreading the talent around. David Sanders, top offensive tackle a year ago, commits to Tennessee over Ohio State. Does he maybe go to Ohio State if there's no NIL? I don't know. But he's at Tennessee. Now, whoever's the quarterback, because Nico's gone, whether it's Joey Aguilar, whether it's eventually George McIntyre, whether it's eventually Faison Brandon, who's committed in 2026, they have their cornerstone left tackle for 2-3 years. Get over it. Nobody was freaking out when Tennessee got the number one offensive tackle. By the way, year before, you know where the number one offensive tackle went? 2024? Jordan Seaton. He's at Colorado. So it's like, this is what NIL does. It spreads out the talent. If everybody sticks to that $20.5 million, guess what? It's going to spread out the talent. It's going to make the sport more competitive across the board. It's going to make it less predictable week to week. And so I give Felix Ojo credit. By the way, the school, the other thing that Derek said when I spoke with him, and I understand he's an agent. I understand he's always going to promote his client, promote himself, whatever. But he did say, it's a risk from Texas Tech, but they believe in the kid and they like the kid. So I'm willing to sit here and say, listen, it's different. It's not what I grew up with. It's not what you grew up with. It's not what your parents grew up with. But it's where we are now. And by the way, all this stuff happens with all your favorite teams. I don't care if you're a UConn basketball fan, a Kentucky basketball fan, a Clemson football fan. This stuff happens behind the scenes. This just became public because the money was so big and the 3-year guarantee deal was basically uncharted territory. It doesn't make it terrible. It doesn't mean it's the downfall of college football. I have no issue with it. Congrats, Texas Tech. By the way, Big 12 media days are coming up, and it sure does feel like Texas Tech is going to be a hot topic there. All right, I'll tell you what. I think it is time for us to get out of here. We appreciate your support. It is July. It is a little bit of a quieter time, but we are rolling on. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Aaron Torres pod. If you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcast, please make sure to subscribe. Make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead and give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All for today's show. Be back probably Wednesday with a new episode of the Aaron Torres Pod, so we appreciate you. Shout out to Torrin Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. Be back Wednesday. Probably some Big 12 Media Day stuff, maybe some more hoops, whatever pops up.